on site. So we need to place an effective teacher in every classroom, ensure that the best teachers stay in teaching, attract great talent in math and science and special education, subjects that are traditionally hard to staff, and reward excellence. And when the evidence is clear that teachers aren't serving students well, we also need to counsel them to perhaps think about maybe moving to another profession. Data systems that help teachers. I'm going through the assurances. So for the data systems, information is needed. That's sort of the bottom line. And quality information, when it's provided in the hands of students, teachers, parents, and policymakers, can enable the system to improve. Good, timely data supports good decision making. For example, teachers can better assess what's working in the classroom and tailor their teaching accordingly. Parents should also have the ability to know earlier how their children and their schools, children's schools are performing. Principals can understand what's working across classrooms and make the appropriate adjustments to expand what's working and to change what's not. And policymakers can advance the necessary reforms based on knowing what is working and what isn't. So the whole notion of a data system, we think, is critical to transparency and to fostering a system that will continue to improve to allow us to improve on student achievement. Without great systems that track students over time, we have no way of measuring our collective efforts to improve student achievement, enhance teacher effectiveness, and put our kids on the path to succeed in college and in the workplace. Beyond just having the information, we need to use it differently than we've been using it. And I can't tell you how many times I've actually been out on monitoring trips and we've talked to people at the building level, and we've looked at school improvement plans, and we asked how you got up to the plan that you developed, and said we use data, and we asked to see the data. And we see that there's a disconnect between the data, in many instances what the data says, and what is being implemented in terms of the improvement plans. And so it's a matter of analyzing the data and applying it appropriately. Whatever resources that are needed that will help us support student achievement, making that a part of those plans. We want the data systems to follow kids from preschool to high school, and from high school to college, and from college to career. That is a big thing to try to put in place a data system that will accommodate all of those things. We should be able to see the connection between the reform strategies and school improvement, and be able to track the progress of all of our kids. And one of the big things, and this is fairly new, we've supported data systems before, we've had the standards and assessments in place, but one of the biggest areas of focus in this administration is addressing the needs of our most struggling schools. And students, whether in rural, suburban, or urban school systems, in both the wealthiest and poorest communities across our states, must be taught using challenging content aligned to high standards. There are some schools where the pattern of failure is so entrenched that dramatic intervention, such as replacing all the adults in the building, appears to be the only option. Few students in these schools can meet the current standards, so significant intervention is required. The most successful turnaround strategy is sometimes to close down some schools and replace the leadership and most of the teachers. The adults would leave, the children would stay, and new adults would come in. Highly effective teachers, innovative strategies for students who are far behind, a belief that all students can learn to high standards. These and other strategies can help to turn around the bottom schools in our country, the lowest 5%. Linked to these four reforms, we had three areas of funding. On the left side, in the green, you see the State Fiscal Stabilization Fund, the almost $49 billion, which explicitly is meant to help save and create jobs. These funds are helping augment school system budgets to mitigate cuts in education funding while also laying the foundation for the four reforms. Now, I recall from my last visit that, and I will acknowledge that these funds are being used differently in different parts of the country. And so, with that said, I'm moving on. On the right side is an additional almost $10 billion worth of grants that include Race to the Top and many other competitive grants that allow us to advance our reform agenda even further. Each of these grants separately is linked to the four reform strategies. So we're very strongly encouraging you as you apply for any of the discretionary grants that are going to be coming down the pipe, and as you use the ARA dollars and your regular grants for these federal programs, that you view them comprehensively. Look at the school as the level that where the need has to be met, and try to work to figure out how to use these funds effectively to bring about whole school improvement and to provide the needed support that each child should have. Now, those will be challenging to some extent because we have regulations that surround some of these funds, and we're working to try to provide some scenarios over the next few months. One of the things that we did most recently is that we finally released the response to intervention guidance, and it's an audio presentation. You can actually open it, and it will give you the narrative and the presentations behind each slide. So it's like you're at a conference, but you don't have to be there because it's all contained in that PowerPoint. And it shows how, for example, in a targeted Title I school, you can use the resources from IDEA Part B, from Title I Part A, and Title III Part A to support a tiered intervention approach in your schools, in your targeted assistance schools. And so I want to point that out to you as perhaps a document you ought to look at. It has a number of different scenarios that explain which set of funds needs to go in first. Now, this is part of I guess sometimes you say this is not rocket science. I think this probably is rocket science. But it provides some strategies that you can use to use those funds effectively to support a tiered intervention strategy. And it doesn't have to be a response to intervention. It could be a high school literacy effort where you have those populations in the high school. And so I think you can transfer some good information from that set of guidance to help you with your efforts. At the bottom of the additional funding for existing formula grant programs are the formula grant programs that existed for a long time. Title I and IDEA, there's Ed Tech money, and that totals approximately $26 billion. All of the ARA formula grant dollars have been distributed at this point for Title I and IDEA and Ed Tech and several of the other programs. So you already have those. The last round of IDEA and Title I was released a month early at the request of the Vice President because there was a belief that we need to get those funds in your hands through their SEAs and for them to in turn be able to get those dollars to you as quickly as possible. So the $48 billion, the first phase of funding for this initiative was $28 billion. As you know, that money has already been made available, but we provided the additional dollars as you see outlined here. In addition to the $12.6 billion for SF, or the stabilization dollars, and that's phase 2, there are 6 other ARA grant programs totaling $9.7 billion. Race to the Top, which is $4.35 billion. School Improvement Grants, which is $3.5 billion. Ed Technology, $650 million. We've already published the guidance of Ed Tech, and much of that money has already been obligated. And it was given by formula to states, and states then in turn administer those funds either competitively or through a distribution that they work on. The Investing in Innovation Fund, IQ'd, we're calling this.